This House is in Standing Finance Committee. When we suspended on Wednesday, we were on head 31. Ministry of Innovation, Ministry of Industry, Innovation, Science and Technology. And to that we shall revert. Just let me remind honorable members and officers, today there's 5 minutes allocated to the minister to respond to questions and 3 minutes to each officer. And honorable members also have 3 minutes and can have follow-up questions. Honorable member for St. Michael South Central.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have only one question for the minister and his team. Some months ago, there was in the international community quite a lot of conversation about the Doing Business report. I need not go over what was the substance of that conversation, but suffice it to say that the Doing Business report is essentially no more as a benchmark for how countries are doing with respect to their competitiveness. The government of Barbados, a few years ago, set up a Doing Business subcommittee of cabinet, as well as a Doing Business private sector committee to work in partnership. And that was all in response to a World Bank country report on Barbados's performance with respect to doing business. So the World Bank visited, made some recommendations, and it was adopted. Some of the recommendations were adopted, and there was quite a lot of work that went into responding to these gaps in terms of doing business in Barbados. A lot has been done. Well, I should say quite a bit has been done. So the work we heard with respect to CAIPO has started. There's quite a bit that has been advanced in terms of online payments, thanks to collaboration between MIST and the Ministry of Finance. And I do have to acknowledge the work of the colleagues from MIST and the former minister in those efforts. However, my question is as follows. Given that there is no longer a Doing Business report, in fact, I think that as part of the last cabinet, that language was changed, perhaps to competitiveness. But given that there's no longer that report, and given as well that, to be quite frank, the process and the system that was created, the subcommittee of cabinet, the private sector committee, it was a large undertaking. It is a large undertaking. It requires some very specific focus. It requires dedicated resources. I recall that at the time, just prior to the last general election, I had a conversation with the chair of the Barbados Private Sector Association. It was acknowledged and it was put on the agenda, certainly of the social partnership, that this work on competitiveness has to be housed somewhere, it has to be led, and it has to be intentional. What are the plans to be able to advance that? Minister, I acknowledge that it may not reside with you, but it certainly is your business. What can you say, do you believe to be the plans to advance this work as a body of work, to work with the private sector, to keep these issues on the front burner? How is the government setting itself up under the Ministry of Industry to be able to advance this work?
Thank you, Honourable Member for St. Michael South Central. The question is a good question. As you rightly said, it is not one that is housed specifically in MIST, but I think that all of us as ministers in government have a responsibility to improve the ease of doing business, even though there may not be an ease of doing business report that still stands. You mentioned collaboration with the private sector. And indeed, this is something that has to be a focus of this ministry and all ministries, because government cannot do all on its own accord. I do believe that we have a responsibility as a government to create a facilitating environment, one that would allow the private sector then to be able to build out its own programs, initiatives, infrastructure that would allow then for the improvements in the ease of doing business, business facilitation in Barbados, and not only for our locals, but also for those who are operating outside of our shores, who seek to interact and do business within Barbados. So there's much that needs to take place there in terms of collaborations. You mentioned industry in particular, and it brings me right back to the geographical indicator that we would have discussed on Monday when we broke, when we were in session. And it's in that type of a format that you actually see the collaboration taking place, because whilst government and the ministry that I lead, the Ministry of Industry, Innovation, Science and Technology, whilst we will be the ones that will spearhead and lead the charge for the establishment of the geographical indicator, it is really the rum producers in Barbados, the varied rum producers in Barbados, that will be the ones that will be on a daily basis producing in line with those standards of the GI. And they're the ones that will be out there marketing their product, and they're the ones that will be earning the foreign exchange for our country. So this shows the marriage between where government creates a facilitating environment, where we create the landscape and the roadmap, if you will, that then allows the private sector and entities therein to be able to come alongside of government and to produce, and at the end of the day, for the benefit of the rest of the country. In terms of any specific plans relative to committees, I would have mentioned on Monday that it is my intention, as soon as we settle some of the different programs and projects that we have working on, to start to reach out, to have those interministerial conversations to break down some of the silos where it is MIST over here doing its own thing and the other ministry over there doing their own thing, and where we can now interact with them. As I said to, I think, the Honourable Member for Christchurch East, I think I would have said it too. I intend to lead the charge in that regard, to take the initiative, to initiate those conversations, so that we can see where within government, not only within the private sector, but within government, how can MIST work with the various ministries that are there to be able to collaborate, to support and to build out and to facilitate the infrastructure that's needed, so that each ministry can then perform and become more efficient and more effective in what we have to do in delivering services to the people of Barbados. So you're absolutely right. The ease of doing business may not be that overarching report that we're working towards seeing ourselves go up in the rankings, but I do believe that every minister's daily task must be to see how we can ease business and how we can facilitate business and how we can make business more efficient and more effective. Technology will play a big role in that, because we're going to roll out a lot of digital solutions we already have. You would have mentioned the fact that through the collaboration with KIPO, you have payments online and you have business registration and stuff like that taking place online. So there's much that has already taken place, but there's so much more to come. And we will, as the ministry responsible for a lot of that, will lead the charge and continue to lead the charge in terms of putting the technological and scientific infrastructure in place to support government and the private sector being able to produce and produce effectively.
Thank you. Thank you, Minister. I suppose my only final comment in that regard would be that I don't expect the Ministry of Finance, Economic Affairs and Investment to be in the well at any point, so I will not get to put these questions to the Minister. So it means that you are therefore acting as a bit of a proxy. But just to say that I would hope, I would expect that perhaps between your ministry that is going to have to drive a lot of the technology solutions behind the competitiveness issues, and between yours and the Ministry of Energy and Business Development, that I would hope that these efforts are not lost, because it does need to be coordinated somewhere. It needs to be driven somewhere. Somebody has to come to work every day to make sure that these things happen, and to make sure that perhaps the things that one ministry is not thinking of, or that might fall in between certain ministries, that they are driven and that they are done. I have a second question that came to me, Minister, as you were speaking. And I do believe that Mr. Hill made reference to it in your last engagement with the House. But I have a concern. A national developmental concern, and it has to do with the issue of innovation. I raised it when the minister responsible for business development was in the well as well. My concern is that when it comes to the private sector, as I mentioned before, we have small sole-owned enterprise kinds of businesses. We have a few medium-sized for our jurisdiction, and then we have, on the other end of the spectrum, very large players that have traditionally controlled wealth and production in this country and in this region. My concern is that there is a huge breach in the middle when it comes to the majority of the country and who is going to drive growth. My concern is that we do not have a model to identify innovative startups. With all due respect to those who are involved in retail and so on, there is only so much scope in that regard for growth, the buy and sell kind of model. My concern is that we have not yet developed a real ecosystem for financing innovative startups. And I wanted to hear, what are the resources in these estimates? I heard Mr. Hill make reference to, I think it was an innovation award, which is very good to excite people's expectations and imagination. But what are the concrete steps that are going to be taken to which resources are attached in these estimates in this financial year to identify 1 or 2 or 5 high-growth, innovative companies that the ministry can work with, can develop, to make sure that we are really injecting investment into the growth ecosystem in Barbados?
Thank you for the question, Honourable Member. I will pitch it to the CEO of the BADC, because we do have quite a few initiatives that I think will be pleasing to your ears. We know that innovation is going to be one of the critical drivers to economic enfranchisement for our people. You mentioned the divide that exists between large exporters and those smaller exporters. I would say here that the ministry has a view to develop and to build out the capacity of our smaller companies, micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises, to encourage them and to be able to lift their standards in being able to produce at higher levels and higher volumes, in particular, so that they will be able to drive exports. So you will find that we, as a ministry, are undertaking to have more of what you call shared use facilities. And with shared use facilities, these allow persons that might not, individuals, entrepreneurs, sole proprietors, that may not have the capacity to build out their own infrastructure, and therefore not be able to have the capacity to produce at the volumes required for even local demand, and then of course even beyond that, export demand. We are going to allow those individuals to have access to shared use facilities that would allow them to have a more even playing field with the larger producers. So we're going to have one, we'd have spoken on Monday with reference to the International Food Science Center. And that is one in particular where persons in agro-processing will be able to come together and use the I would say, leading and cutting edge technologies that and equipment that we're going to make available to them, so that they can then produce at larger quantums, produce at a larger scale, and not only and perfect their craft as well. In addition to that, we're going to have things like the shared use facility relative to mechanics, the Mechanics Bay and Spray Center, where they will be able to go in, auto mechanics all across the island will be able to go forward and to rent space within the booth or utilize space within the booth to be able to not only produce for their own customers, but then to be able to, it's going to solve multiple problems actually, because we have a chronic issue in Barbados where persons set up their automobile business, their mechanic business on the side of the road. And we know what this can create. Each of us have constituencies where I'm sure that this is something that can become problematic. And we're trying to see how we can solve that by giving them use to a central facility where they will be able to then bring their craft off the streets and off the residential areas, out of the residential areas, into a commercial facility that is built for that. So we'll solve some of the residential issues that you're seeing on that side. But then they're also going to have access to equipment again that is beyond what they may have within their small remit, in their small village, in the residential area where they're operating their business. So we're trying to see how we can create, as a government, create spaces where these same micro, small, and medium-sized entrepreneurs can come into a facility that can then help them to elevate their game and to increase their capacity. And I will stop by just mentioning the fact that you did speak to, and I don't want us to pass it or to look at it glibly, but that innovation challenge, the national innovation challenge that we are going to be bringing, is actually going to drive innovation. And married, that is under the BIDC, but married to that, we have in the science market research and innovation unit of the MIS, we'll also have quite a few challenges where we are seeking to develop innovation within our people, within the next generation. So at the school-based level, so primary, secondary school, and then on the industrial side, we're looking to see how we can help existing entrepreneurs to be more innovative in their products. I will let Mr. Hill speak more on this and elaborate. And I'll also ask him to give some information relative to the export bank that we're looking to bring as well, which will also facilitate small businesses looking to have not only access to capital, but also the access to the information and capacity building potential, so that they can then go further and beyond where they're currently existing and operating. Mr. Hill.
Good morning. Thank you, Minister. So I'll speak to the question at two levels. Number one, I think the first question, Minister, that you asked, the doing business report, tends to bleed into the second one as well. But what we have been putting in place to help make sure that export is the easiest thing you can do in Barbados is that we have implemented, for example, a export rating system, a scorecard based on 4 parameters that we are looking at for all the businesses across the island. Primarily looking at one, is it real? Is it real bankable business that you're actually pursuing? 2, can it win? Is the technology, are the systems that need to be there to support your delivery system in place? So is this doable? So now is it, and finally, is it worth it? Is it going to make some money? Is it going to transform you into a millionaire? So the key thing that we're looking at now is that scorecard system, and we've tied that scorecard system. We've just gotten our staff trained in the International Institute of Business Analysts. So we're bringing to bear a stronger business analytical service through our BDOs and our research officers to bear, so that these companies are getting consistent business analytical services and taking place. And that will then tie back in to a reporting system that the country can see how agencies in particular sectors are performing extremely well around, 1, bioeconomy. So we have that as one key pillar. 2, the design economy, which right now is really struggling. We have a lot of interventions to do there in terms of our designers, and they're the ones that can get us into that middle growth space that you're speaking to. And then finally, our oceans. How do we explore our big EEZ and really build some multi-million companies around our oceans. So we have this scorecard system in place, which we've already implemented for the last 9 months, and we're building it out, and we really look forward to the country benefiting from this within that export-oriented industry. But as we come now to customer needs, based on the needs analysis, we have a special technical assistance program that have been running for the last 20 years. The government have spent about $55 million in distribution and grants over that 20-year period to companies and firms and individuals. And what we have seen is that we still had a flat line in terms of exports, and even a flat line in terms of industrial productivity improving, even though there was this massive investment in the private sector. So what we did do is look at the need to what is really the instrument that's needed to help growth take place. And what most small, medium, and large companies spoke to, are not really much large companies, because most of our large companies, as you would know, are owned by foreign nationals. But at the medium level, which account for 22% of our export ecosystem, the need in that space is cash flow issues. So therefore, we took the Special Technical Assistance Program that primarily just aids with capital investments, and how can we pivot it into a cash flow export credit agency system. Now we anticipate that that vehicle is the instrument that can drive the growth in that middle market space, particularly because, for example, with that export bank, if you have your order from your overseas company, you can come to the bank with your purchase order, you can come to the bank with your performance invoice. The bank releases the operating capital that you need to meet your order. Then the company pays the bank your, for the invoice comes back to the bank takes out what it lent you, and you get the rest. And that way, we believe we can create a lot more millionaires in Barbados by them going out into the international market space. They only now have to focus on really marketing. We're helping you in the background with your capital needs in that middle market. And this is not only for people that are producing goods, but this is also for persons who are producing services, because we are primarily very strong in services. So for example, if you have a service contract with a company in Latin America, but you need operating capital, you can come to the export bank, and that facilitates you getting the working capital that you need to grow your operation with. So those, the instrumentality that was needed, we're in the process now of making sure that the TOR that has been sent out brings to bear the right type of framework. We're also building this out on a digital platform, so this system is not necessarily going to be a walk-in bank scenario, but it is fully digitized, so that we can really make the ease of export business very, very, very simplified in Barbados, and doing a number of different things to make it a framework that we empower persons to create wealth in a significant way. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that response, Mr. Hill. I think, through you, Chair, that the export bank facility is a great idea. I have some feedback for you that may be helpful, because I do think that there is already a framework in the government of Barbados to be able to execute that. So perhaps now is not the place, but I look forward to being able to discuss further. Thank you, Minister, and thanks, team.
Thank you, Honourable Member for St. Philip West.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want, Mr. Chairman, to commend the team at the ministry for the work it has done, and to which the minister referred earlier, and as it relates to the digital ID. Now, I know that for more than a year and a half, the team has been working along with the private sector and other partners across government to be able to bring this to life. My question, Mr. Chairman, is with all the work that's being done and with the indication from the minister that the ID will indeed be going forward and that we will in fact be launching in the short term, what can the public of Barbados expect in terms of communication? What will the people of St. Philip West and the rest of Barbados need to prepare in advance in order to be able to re-register in collaboration with the Electoral and Boundaries Commission? What other preparations will be required so that when the ID is ready to be launched, we can have a population that is ready for that exciting eventuality?
Thank you for the question, Honourable Member for St. Philip West. And let me, at this point in time, also thank you for, as former Minister of MIST, for the dedication and, of course, the effective job of bringing the digital ID to the stage that is at to date. I am excited. I am really excited. I was actually just anxious for a question to come on the digital ID because the digital ID, I think, is going to be revolutionary. I am excited to see it in the hands of Barbadians, and I hope they are excited about it as well, since we've started talking about it. And as you rightly said, Honourable Member, we have a communication plan that is going to be rolled out at the appropriate time to ensure that members of the public know about the card, and not only know about the card in terms of features and benefits, etc., but know how to access it and how they're going to get it in their hands. So I'm going to allow the project manager, who's been sitting patiently waiting for this opportunity, I'm going to allow her to speak at this point in time. That is Mrs. Elsa Webster, and she is the project manager for the Digital National ID project. And I would allow, of course, if the PS wants to come in at the tail end of her presentation, if he feels that he wants to add anything to it, I would allow him the opportunity to do that as well. So I would allow Elsa to speak at this time. Ms. Webster.
Good morning, honorable members. I'm Elsa Webster, the project manager for the Barbados National Digital Identity System. Notice I did not say card, I said digital identity system. And that is because it is more than just a card. I would like to just verify the question that Minister McConney has asked. I think it is with regard to what does the public, including the members of her constituency, need to do to prepare for the rollout of the ID, of the national ID, the communications plan. Okay, is that it, Minister?
That is correct. Through you, Chairman. That is correct, as well as what kinds of communications we can also be expecting at this time to get us ready.
We have a very comprehensive communications plan. It is multimodal. It is designed to appeal to every age and situation that can be expected in Barbados. As you would be aware, Minister, we've had a number of consultations with stakeholders so that they can tell us what they would like to see and to determine whether they thought that the communications that we were planning was indeed suitable and suitable for the teenagers, those in the middle, elderly people, so that our stakeholder groups would have included people from the age of 17 right through to 70, 75, 80. The types of communications that we will have and that we will roll out immediately following the launch. And what do I call the launch? We refer to it as the big reveal, when the Prime Minister announces and holds up the card, and we all get excited about what it looks like. And the first set of communications that will be rolled out immediately following that would be videos on the what are we doing, why are we doing it, why do we need a new ID card. The first set of communications will be composed of videos along that line, along with Instagram carousels, social media, brochures, As soon as the launch occurs as well, brochures will be mailed to every household. Those brochures are pretty comprehensive, and they outline exactly what the citizen needs to do, what the potential card holder, because it's not just citizens, what the potential card holder needs to do to start preparing. What documents do they need? So if you're a citizen, is it your birth certificate, your passport? And we have a comprehensive list of all of those documents. They will be provided in the brochure, which will be mailed out by the Electoral and Boundaries Commission to every single household in Barbados. Along with that, we will have, as I mentioned before, videos with voiceovers by the popular influencers in Barbados. And again, those influencers have been selected by the various stakeholders with whom we consulted. In addition to that, we will that program, the what and the why, what do you have to bring, that will be communicated for about 3 weeks after the launch. And during that time, the brochures should have arrived at everybody's house. We also have included in the communication an information website, which is very comprehensive, and the URL for that website will be released at that time, and that again adumbrates the lists of requirements for each situation, whether you're resident in Barbados, whether you're a citizen, whether you're here on a work permit, whether you're a diplomat, because the requirements vary for each of these groups. And therefore, we are making sure that people know ahead of time, so they will have the brochures in their hands, they will be hearing it in the media, but they can also go to the website 24/7 to verify the information that they need to collect before registration starts. Does that answer your question?
Through you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, it does partially so. I think you have done a good job in explaining some of what will be required. My second question, so that we don't further delay this chamber, is as it relates to the security regarding the card. It's one thing for our population to have the mobile access to digital and mobile identification, but there's also a responsibility for the security on behalf of the citizen, him or herself, or the holder, him or herself. And my question is, what are some of the effort being made by the ministry to ensure that people understand their own responsibility as it relates to security, that it is not just the role of government to deal with the security, but that there's also a personal responsibility and how they are to seek to move forward in that regard?
Thank you, Minister. I understand your question to be with regard to the personal responsibility of card holders to secure their card, as well as to give an idea of the efforts made by the ministry. And I think in order to do that, I will start off by saying why we need a digital identity. Official proof of identity is fundamental to an individual's ability to access a range of vital services: healthcare, education, mobile connectivity, social programs, financial services. And the ministry has a mandate to modernize the public sector and develop a vibrant digital economy and society in Barbados. The digital identity is at the core of all the digital transformation efforts. And this program started prior to COVID. If there's one good thing that came out of COVID, it is that the pandemic has provided a catalyst for the rapid uptake of digital technologies, even among the older demographic, which was the most resistant. So transactions that have been previously demanded an in-person presence were hastily put online. Therefore, proof of identity became even more important in the digital space than it is in the physical space. And along with that comes the need for security. We have a number of people now performing daily tasks, booking appointments, paying bills online, attending classes, etc. And since the digital identity is intended to be the cornerstone for government services and for public services too, we had to ensure that the proper the proper security was put in place. Why do I say that? Because we know that the comments have been made that this has been taking a very long time. But the need for a strong identity verification and authentication system is crucial to allow for a secure and simple and positive experience, and also to encourage the rapid adoption of services and access to the digitally offered services. So for any digital identity to work efficiently, guidelines are needed to be put in place to ensure the security of the personal data and to preserve privacy and uphold civil rights. To that end, we've seen legislation like the Barbados Data Protection Act be put in place to ensure that the data subject's right to privacy are not only protected but can be enforced. So what is data privacy? In its simplest terms, it is the protection of your personal data, your personal identity information data from those who should not have any access to it. And so we have, for example, the Data Protection Act. While you may not think so, that is one of the instruments that's meant to help people to come to the point where they're comfortable that their data is secure. In addition to that, we will be rolling out, in collaboration with the Digital Literacy Group, some classes or virtual sessions on what you do to protect your card. The simplest way to protect your card is to do exactly what you do with your credit card right now. You don't share the PIN. We will have a PIN that allows that you have to give access to your data, because remember, your data is yours. PII data, personal identity information, belongs to the citizen, and they have the right to protect it. So through the Data Protection Act, where there will be education and awareness, they will understand what is personal data. Because in order to protect the data, you must know what data it is that you're protecting. Is it private? Is it public? You have data that is open and can be easily shared, but there is data that is privileged data, and therefore you have to give access. So we will be having sessions to educate and make persons aware of how they can protect their cards. And it's in a similar manner to how you protect your credit cards right now and your debit cards.
Honourable Minister.
Thank you very much. My final question relates to the popularization of science and the collaboration to which the minister, and in fact, I believe it was a member of your team, referred to as it relates to popularizing science through schools. Now, as you know, this government's policy and the direction in which the Ministry of Education is continuing to move is to make sure that science, technology, engineering, and math, and including the arts, are part of what we do. Now, when we talk about popularizing science, we're talking about bringing it to the general public and making science a way of thinking and of making it more understandable and accessible to everyday people. As it relates to the school, Minister, I am very much looking forward to the collaboration between MIST and the Ministry of Education, and I'm very interested as in what is the ministry doing in terms of building the additional partnerships that will be required to work with government to popularize science.
Thank you so much, Honourable Member for St. Philip West. I would like the PS, before we jump to that question, I would like the PS to just finish off on the digital ID. He has a few points that he wants to raise there. And then I will ask Director Charles Cyrus to speak to your substantive question, or the final question, relative to science, schools, and the combination between us and the Ministry of Education. So PS, Marshall.
Good morning, Honourable Minister. I want to follow on from what the project manager would have stated with respect to the security of the national ID. And I want to mention here that I am from a background of security, because in my last position, when I worked at the Immigration Department, we would have seen national IDs on a daily basis, because the national ID is a document that we would use to verify identity of persons, and also as a document for the submission of a Barbados passport. And over the years, I would have looked at a number of national IDs, and over the years I would have also seen that there were a number of areas of security that should be tightened up. Now, the current national ID is a laminate. In actual fact, it is just two pieces of plastic on either side of a piece of card and a picture. And that simply in itself suggests a security breach, because anybody with a laminate machine can replicate that card. And it's also highly susceptible to photo substitution, where you can take out one picture and put another picture inside of that. So personally, I am quite concerned with the security features, and as a ministry, we are also seeking to mitigate the element of security. Now, one other point that I would make is that over the years, I would have seen that there were no substantive changes to the national ID. And I would have checked and researched, and it was brought to my attention that the identification card would not have been fundamentally changed since 1979. And in this regard, that speaks volumes, not only to security, but the practicality and utilization. But if we want to zero in specifically on the mitigation of security, the national identification card will have something called a machine-readable zone. And this zone is a zone where data is stored. And it is common in passports to have machine-readable zones where the information can be deciphered at a terminal. You place the specific ID or passport at a terminal, and it brings information. And the information is information that is placed in a particular code. So if you try to tamper anyway with this machine-readable zone, it will not be readable by that terminal. So that one aspect of security is involved in the national identification card. There's also, or will also be, a QR code. And we know that QR codes also store information and data. And as long as there's a QR code, then it would determine that the person who utters that identification card will be the person who is authorized to do so. So we value security, and we are already taking the whole concept of security in a serious manner. And I must mention at this point as well too, that in order to get the national ID to a point where it is secure, we engage numerous stakeholders in this regard. I might also mention here too that the national identification card is a collaboration between MIS and also the Electoral and Boundaries Commission, who really are the competent authority for the national ID. But what I will state in order to close and to pass on is that we have also engaged a cybersecurity working group, which is responsible for looking at the national identification card to see if there are breaches of security and try to mitigate these breaches. So I will end by saying that the Ministry of Industry, Innovation, Science and Technology is cognizant of the security challenges that the existing security card has, and we are ensuring that as we move on to a new national identification system, that those issues are fully dealt with and do not occur again. Thank you very much.
Good morning, Charles Cyrus, Director, Science, Market Research and Innovation. In relation to the department's interface with the Ministry of Education, you will see that there are a number of programs that deal with the youth in Barbados. And I mentioned some of the programs on Monday. I will come to you. The Science and Technology Summer Camp is a camp that we have been hosting for a number of years, 11 years to be exact. And This is a camp that targets children between the age of 6 to 11. And some might ask, why that target? Well, I guess we know that children and parents often make career choices at a very, very early age. So it's important to expose the young ones, to science and technology and STEAM. So let's say STEAM at a very, very early age. So I think, notwithstanding the fact that a summer camp might seem like I don't know, some might see it as just maybe an opportunity for students, to have something to do. But no, we see it as an important activity. Students need to be introduced to science, technology, engineering, and mathematics in that way. It's really about informal education. Yes, science will be taught in a formal way in the school system, but this focus is really on informal education. You need to go out, let's say, in the fields and look at a plant, look at the stems and see how it works and so on. And you need to visit places in which you see science in motion. All right, so it's about introducing students and getting them to be excited about science, because, like I said, we are aware that young persons make career choices very, very early, 6, 8, 9. You get students come and say, yeah, I want to be a lawyer, I want to be a doctor, whatever, even at age 6 and 9. So it's very, very critical that you get the students at a very, very early age. So we see that as an important thing. And because of the target here, is that age group, obviously there's this interaction with the educational system. Minister, you're aware of the Science and Technology Festival, which we have held on 2 previous occasions, which is a partnership between the University of West Indies, Faculty of Science and Technology, and MISS. And here again, we are providing students, and this is students throughout the educational system from primary right to tertiary. We are providing them with the opportunity to showcase their work and also to see science in action, because it is not only about students, but because we have participation from the private sector and the public sector, and also public sector science institutions and public sector science institutions. So it is really about bringing all those various actors, if you will, or players within Barbados in one space, so that you can inspire young people to see the work that is being undertaken by more mature individuals in the particular areas, and you hope that that would influence their career choices. All right? So that is another area in which there will be collaboration with the educational system, because obviously we have to reach out to the various schools across the island to get the children to be interested and to participate. And we are hoping that in the next round, in the next program, that we can have more of students doing things. So looking at, let's say, an issue within the community that they can have a solution to and showcase that. So that is what we're looking for. All right, so we think that this could provide an excellent partnership for the education system, because teachers can become mentors to the students and help them engage in these activities and showcase these activities, to the members of the general public, their parents, and so on. So that is another area in which we will be interfacing with the education system. The other one is the innovation competition that it was just mentioned slightly on Monday, but the innovation competition, we are looking to build, and we are focusing here on the development of a gaming industry in Barbados, because I know that the minister in his presentation on Monday had mentioned nascent activities. I'm aware that gaming and gaming development is a very big and growing industry. In fact, you may not be aware, but there's a national gaming competition amongst experienced gamers that takes place every year. And in fact, the last competition, there were more spectators, there were more people involved than the finals of the NBA, National Basketball Association in the United States. So yes, people will talk about LeBron James, or you might talk about Steph Curry and so on, and everybody will think, yes, everybody knows about these players and want to be part of it and see it. But yet here you have something like a gaming competition that has more audience than the NBA. So it just shows you how big it is, and it's something that we need to develop because the number of jobs associated with the industry. You can have the storyteller as we try to embrace the A aspect, the arts aspect, and the creative aspect of that STEAM component. You have people that can be storytellers. You have coders, and you have marketing persons. So in the game, it's really about a teamwork, and you have composers and so on. So you have an opportunity here to embrace that arts component of this team. Because you might have a person who is better at storytelling and so on, whereas you have another team member that's better at the coding side, right? So this is a way you combine those elements of STEAM. This is science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics. So those are some of the programs that we will be embarking on during the financial year, and we'll definitely have an interface with the education system. There's just one more that I would like to mention at this point in time, Minister, is a mentorship program. We are working with the University of the West Indies. One of the lecturers in biological and chemical science at the university to establish a mentorship program for scientists. But we are doing it really as part of also a research program, because we are looking to see what is out there. What is a student looking for in the mentorship program before we actually put the program in place. So we are doing some research, and we will be implementing a mentorship program, and this is targeting science students, a science mentorship program as we go forward in the next financial year. Thank you.
And if I may jump back in here very quickly, just to say that Director Cyrus would have mentioned gaming, and that is from the perspective of how we're going to be teaching and empowering our young people in the area of gaming. But the other side of this portfolio is industry. We're seeking to build out industries. We're going to be investing in our young people in terms of their knowledge and their ability to understand coding, and understand gaming, and to participate in it. But we're also on the other side going to be creating and carving out an industry for them as well, so that they don't just get the knowledge, but they then have a way to use it commercially to empower themselves and to create wealth. I had a meeting just about 2 weeks ago with an international firm, and these are where the strategic partnerships and international relationships comes in, because with that firm, they're looking to set up a center here in Barbados that will allow for them to test games that are coming to the market. And in the first instance, that facility, when open, will employ 200 young people in Barbados. And these are things that I am driving hard, because when it comes to employment, especially when it comes to our young people being employed, and employed in sectors that are growing, multi-billion-dollar industries like gaming, and as Director Cyrus said, that are capturing audiences in the millions. We need to ensure that Barbados has a stake in that game, and we are going to build out sectors like gaming and others, innovative sectors that are going to lead the way to ensure that our young people have opportunities far and wide afield.
Honourable Member for the City of Bridgetown.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to end where the Minister began. So let me say good morning to him, the team, and my colleagues. Before I land the plane where I say we began and where we need to end, I would like to ask the Ministry two simple questions. One, is there a plan for an audit and a plan to execute and ensure that each of the ministries are coming up to the 21st century where technology is concerned? The Minister promised exciting plans, and we've sat here over the period of 2 days and heard all the exciting plans, the robotics, the STEAM, the science camps, etc. And I can say I am very excited for this country and the young people of this country and the people in general. But I want to ensure that we take this to every aspect of government and governance where, like for instance, we say we want to make sure that every ministry has some form of gender consciousness. We know that every ministry had the responsibility for some type of HIV programming. I know we're looking at every ministry and the role they can play in climate change. So the question, simply put, is there a plan to ensure that every single ministry, agency, statutory cooperation, etc., is coming up to the 21st century, led by this very important ministry to be the glue to ensure we can bring all of these technologies and advancements to play. The second thing is I want to ask for a specific timeline. I like timelines. I know that we talk about SMART, specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time-bound when we're setting goals in relation to the Wi-Fi program that the minister spoke about for the city of Bridgetown. I would like to thank him for the initiative. I would like to thank the ministry for the initiative, but I would also like to ask if there's any specific timelines and expectations that we can look forward to for that innovative and much-needed initiative.
Yes, thank you, Honourable Member for the City of Bridgetown. Very good questions. I think we'll start with the second question first. Since you're starting from the beginning and the end, etc., we're going to do likewise, and we're going to start from the end. We're going to start with the second question first, and again, we're going to ask Director Owen Herwood to speak on the smart city and the timelines. I can say, of course, as I think I would have alluded to or mentioned on Monday, that we have already started that project, and there are plans to take that even further and to expand it. So I'll let him to elaborate on those timelines for you and to be as specific as possible where we can be, keeping in mind that in the space of technology and innovation and science, it is oftentimes difficult to pin things down to exact dates and times because, you know, there's so many things that can pop up. You may have a plan to expand Wi-Fi in a particular area, but then you don't have the access to a building to put your Wi-Fi infrastructure, your routers, etc. So I will let Owen Herwood, Mr. Herwood, speak to that in more detail. And I'll then your first question, I will ask our Director Rodney Taylor to speak with Rodney Payne. Sorry, Rodney Taylor is CTU. Sorry, too many Rodneys. I'm going to allow Rodney Payne, who is our project manager for the program execution unit, to speak about the public sector modernization program and initiative so that he can give you a better idea as to what we're doing to interact with those various agencies in government to be able to bring them in, as you said, to the 21st century. So I'll start with Director Owen Herwood.
Thanks, Minister. As it relates to the question relating to the Wi-Fi in the city, I would have indicated that we are approximately 25% completed on that project. Originally, we expected to complete the project by the end of May this year. However, we have been encountering a few small setbacks. That 25% completed was where we were able to put the access points on government buildings. However, we are now moving towards putting them on the buildings of the private sector. And there's quite a bit of negotiation that we have to do there. I think that we will get there, but we may be approximately 30 days or so out. Right now, it's going quite good, and I should be in a position to tell you I feel comfortable in telling you that by the end of June, we should have all of the access points down. So that's as much as I can say about having those access points in place.
Director Payne.
Good morning, honorable members. Rodney Payne, Project Manager of the Public Sector Modernization Program. As it relates to the question from the honourable member as to what we are doing to bring the ministries up to speed to operate in the digital technology space, the public sector modernization program is a $40 billion US dollar project, and it can be
Project manager, if I may interrupt, could you please raise your volume? We are having a little challenge hearing you clearly.
Thank you. Is this better?
Yes, it is.
Okay, thanks. So the program can be broken down into a number of different projects, large projects. We have the procurement and installation and rollout of the e-services platform. This is where we intend to place a number of government services to fast-track delivery of online payments, sharing data across government so that we can increase the efficiency of the public institutions. The sharing of data relates to once you've given your information on the platform, and wherever you go, you just have to give your name and your information will become available. This will also be associated with the National Digital ID card system, which relates to when you're doing business with the government of Barbados, that person that is online is the person who they say they are. Additionally, we also have the establishment of the Digitization Center. Now, in order for the ministries, departments, and agencies to operate in the space, they need to have their files digitized and their system digitized as well. And what the center intends to do is to receive those physical assets and change them into electronic format so that the information is readily available to the MDAs to speed up the service delivery of government. The Digitization Center is in operation, and we have a number of persons doing the necessary work there. Also, we have the rollout of the electronic document and records management system. Again, once the physical assets are changed to digital assets, this is the information that we'll be using online. We need a system to allow the ministries, departments, and agencies to share their information, and this is where we will introduce the electronic document management system so that it can share all that information across the government agencies, and it will allow us to speed up in making our decisions and much more getting additional information from a number of players so that we can make some faster decisions. In addition, we also have to upgrade the data center, because with a number of projects coming on stream, a number of digital solutions, we must have to improve the digital infrastructure as well too. So therefore, that is being done so that the ministries, departments, and agencies are able to have their data stored securely, and also have the data shared securely as well. Another project is the review of the legislation to operate in the digital environment. There are a number of, we've made some good strides with the data protection, but then there are other legislative frameworks that we need to improve on and adjust and amend. For example, the cybersecurity is one of them. Telecommunications is another. We spoke about that on Monday. Other projects include the business process reengineering of ministries as well. The ministry has the efficiency unit. However, under the public sector modernization program, we'll be looking at 7 priority agencies right now, but that doesn't mean that any agency that is ready to have support from the public sector modernization program can approach MIS to have a look at their current state and then devise a future state for them. And once we do that, we will also include a technology plan for them to move from that using the physical files to operate in the online space. Also as well, we will do a functional review of 6 ministries under the program. The project cannot finance all the ministries within government, but what will happen, we will do the functional reviews of these 6 ministries, and we'll also ask that the consultants prepare a framework that will allow the government to continue to do the functional reviews of the other ministries to ensure that they're able to undertake their mandates and move to the 21st century in the work that they're doing. So also, I need to indicate that for the ministries, agencies, and ministries, departments, agencies of government, we will be developing, improving the national digital strategy so that, and we will share this with some targets so that they can understand where we are now, where we intend to go, and we will implement that under the public sector modernization program. And in addition to that, we also have the cybersecurity strategy that will be rolled out as well this the next financial year. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, through you, I just want to thank the minister once again. Beyond rhetoric, I would like to go beyond rhetoric to give him a special thank you in relation to providing some form of timeline. I did hear his reservation, like most of us in here, to give the timelines because we believe that once we don't meet these timelines, that it will be like a belt and people will come and try to beat us with it. But I do believe that we need to hold ourselves to some kind of timelines in order to be more successful. And like most Barbadians, I am a reasonable person. And once something comes up, we are all aware of Murphy's Law. We can come back to the public, we can come back to our colleagues, and we can say X, Y, Z. That is my firm belief, and I believe that that is the way that we should be traveling. In relation to the point on modernization, I would like just to close on this. I believe that we have to be very sensitive to the persons who are applying these technologies and so on, because I know that a lot of the times the ministry, the agencies mean well, and we put these things in place, for instance, the paying for licenses, etc., and then a whole set of things go awry because the persons operating it may not feel comfortable or confident to apply these things. And I think that that is something we need to be conscious of as we come into the second year and the second decade of the 21st century, that we should be like the rest of the world in our PJs and paying for things online, as opposed to walking with our PJs to go in line because we have to be there the entire night. I believe that this ministry now has that responsibility to bring us to that. With the minister's new PS and with Mr. Mark Hill at his side, I'm sure he would do well. And I want to close by commending the ministry for the fantastic work thus far, and I look forward to great things. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Honourable Member for St. Thomas.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Good morning to everyone. I am a novice, and let me say that up front, when it comes to the technology. And everybody knows why, because I'm going to speak for the aged this morning in this respect. But I want at the outset to really congratulate the former Honourable Minister, who is now the Minister of Education and an integral part of the setting up of this ministry, and indeed the new minister who, for me, has hit the ground running. And I feel really very proud to see thus far how he is performing. I want, however, to indicate that life has changed in Barbados as it has in the world. And I think it is important that every effort must be made to bring along everybody in this excess technological world that we're living in. It can become very complicated, I must tell you, especially when persons are set in the ways like myself and so many other thousands of Barbadians in this category that I am in called the aged. But I want to say, sir, that if Barbados had continued with the EduTech project that was conceptualized and implemented during the reform package in education around 1995-96, I am sure that we would have been so much far advanced. But when the government changed in 2008 up until 18, everything seemed to have been put on the back burner. And that's why I have a difficulty. I am a politician, but I am a citizen of Barbados first. And I believe that projects that will help with the advancement of people should never, ever be thrown through the window because of political madness. I call it madness because for a project of that nature to be dropped, and it was the leading one in the Caribbean at the time, and so many millions of dollars were placed into EduTech, and then it was dropped like a hot potato because of a particular Labour Party or a particular political party doing it. I think that was so naive and so wrong. So that backward step for me has placed Barbados in a real complicated position at this time. If you go to the supermarket, the gas station, wherever you go now, digital services are required. And our population, meaning the regular folks in communities, are not able to catch up or to pick up the skills as readily because of, we know what inhibitions there are. Some have no light, some do have light but don't have the Wi-Fi. There's so many challenges. And I believe that had we continued on that trajectory, then we would have been so much better off, and we will be standing out like a beacon here from Barbados in this region when it came to the technology. I want to also indicate, sir, that I would wish to hear from the distinguished members from the ministry and the Honourable Minister what synergies there are with other ministries, meaning community development in particular, where again, millions of dollars were invested in developing what we used to call then the community technology programs. And we knew of senior citizens at that time who even made postcards. They were hip with the technology. I know BARP is doing an excellent job, and there are other entities, even the Ministry of People Empowerment. There are senior citizens there who are reaching out, but we are now looking at across the board because we're saying nobody must be left behind when you have to pay your insurance. When we had COVID, the onset of COVID in 2020, and persons had to pay their house insurance online, the car insurance, and different bills, and so they were left at a tremendous disadvantage. And so I am happy for the efforts I have made thus far, the advancement of it all, and I would wish to find out what are the synergies with the Ministry of Community Development and the MPEA, meaning the Ministry of People Empowerment and Elder Affairs, where seniors are the ones who are most disadvantaged because it is a learning curve that is difficult. Always when it comes to new things, it is difficult to try to even listen, fathom, or manipulate. You like to fall back to what you were doing before. I would like please to find out what synergies there are where this is concerned in order for persons in the communities who can't get to wherever to do what they have to do, that those community centers be opened up again. If there's need for new technology to be placed there, as I understand, because the technology changes quickly, I would like to know what plans there are to help Barbadians who are the ordinary folk to get the opportunity to be able to be on the cutting edge. And the other final question I would indicate is, what connections are there? And I know there would be, but I would like to hear, because I am one of the most disgruntled persons when it comes to the telecommunication systems here. If your phone goes down, you have days before you can get it fixed up. There's nobody to speak to. You give your only proper service. Sometimes you have to wait for weeks for it to happen. When you're driving to certain places, you can't get the Wi-Fi anymore, and I'm glad that there's an effort, and I heard just now 25% advance in having it installed in the city. But rural Barbados is also waiting. We're not jealous or envious, but we know that we have the needs there as well. And I would wish to find out where we will come in to be able to access it, and what does this ministry in connection have with those various entities that we have the telephones and so on with, because I want for us to continue, and I know that efforts were started, to start looking at how they can treat this public differently. You can call from now till next year, and sometimes 50 calls, and you can't get anybody, and then they say they're going to come in here 3 hours, and you see them 3 days later. What is it? I know I will be confused, because as I said from the outset, I am backward when it comes to the technology. But I believe that the rest of Barbados should not be left in that position once we give people that voice and that kind of training that will help to prepare them as we go forward in this changing world where the technology is so advanced. Every day it is changing and changing, and we have to adapt. I cannot use the iPhone I have, but I have an old Samsung that I can't part with it. So you understand then those persons who don't have access in that way, or don't have anybody to guide them through the process, how will they be able to get the efforts in this respect advanced to the stage where they can pay their bills online, they can do the various things that are expected, rather than having to go and stand up in lines for whole days in order for them to be able to transact their business. So I would like for the honourable members to give me some kind of idea to clear my head as to how we can go forward, because if you're talking about human and social development, for me, this is more integral at this stage as we go forward. And I want to thank the Honourable Minister and the previous Minister and the team for the efforts that have been made in the work that they have done thus far to be able to ensure that our records are properly secured, that they're moving away from the big files when you go to the Queen Elizabeth Hospital, massive files. If you're going to the child care board, if you're going to our schools and our school boards, so many files taking up more space sometimes than 5 and 6 classrooms. And I think this is an excellent way of us going with the digital aspect of things and leveling that digital divide that is impacting so much on our people here in the country. So I wish to make that simple intervention, sir, and I want to thank everyone for the efforts that have been made thus far in changing the whole outlook as we go forward in this century. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Honourable Member for St. Thomas. You are far more in tune with technology than you let on. You're hitting many nails on the head. We want to thank you for the question. I will have a double header here with two of our directors by the name of Charles. One being Charles Bostic, who's our Director of Digital Infrastructure, and the other one being Charles Cyrus, who's our Director of Science, Market Research, and Innovation. I'm going to allow both of them to tackle the two parts of your question. Just to start, but just to lead off by letting you know, we do not intend to leave anyone behind. We want to ensure that every member of our society is a part of this digital revolution that's taking place here in Barbados. And to that end, we have embarked on programs like the Digital Ambassadors and DigiParents, which I'm going to allow Director Cyrus to speak to. And we have also ensured that even as we move forward with our digital thrust, that we still allow for facilities to be in place for those who are not as up to date with the technology. So, for example, you may be able to go online and use EasyPay to pay certain things, but you can also go to the post office. And we know that a lot of our senior citizens, you'd like to utilize the post office, whether it is to collect their checks and different things like that. They do like to meet there and socialize. It's a part of the culture. So we know that persons will still want to engage in those types of services. And before I hand over to two directors, I would like to make it known as well. As much as the issues that you have noted, Honourable Member, are real, they are real, and that is why that digital divide is something that we are seeking to address and to see how we can reduce it and narrow it. And we know that we will never get it fully there because there's some persons who will just never be about technology. I must say to you that the problem is not as acute as might be first believed, because I give personal experience of this. My dad is 77 years young. And he is a man that is on WhatsApp video calling me. He's a man that's using Zoom for church. He is navigating the digital space quite well at 77 years old, going 78. And there are many others like him who, you know, we have grandparents who we might have thought might not have been able to use the cell phone before, but they're taking up the cell phone and they're getting the hang of it once they start to engage. They realize it's not as difficult as they first thought. So through the various programs that we're going to speak to now, Director Cyrus in particular, we believe strongly that we're going to be able to bring as many of our citizens on board. And for those who find it difficult still to navigate, we're going to have other mediums for them, other modalities that they can utilize. And Director Bostic in particular will speak to your question relative to the telecoms and in particular the quality of service standards. So that, as you rightly said, where services are down or persons lose access to service, you know, the 3 and 4 days, and then really no explanation or no compensation in some cases where necessary. We're going to seek to address that through the quality of standards, and I'm going to allow him to speak that. So hand you over first to Director Cyrus, and then to Director Bostic.
Thank you very much, Minister. Charles Cyrus, Director, Science, Market Research and Innovation. Yes, we are very conscious of inclusivity. Yes, we are not leaving anyone behind. In fact, I know that was a theme that the previous minister stressed, the need to include everyone. As it relates to inclusion, we have identified the Digital Ambassadors, which is a program that has started in 2018 when the Prime Minister removed the requirements for students pursuing bachelor's degrees or master's degrees at tertiary institutions to pay their tuition fees. As a result of that, we decided that we would form this group of students, provide them with the opportunity to volunteer. The volunteer will be providing assistance in any digital transformation initiative. And we have done a number of activities, you know, throughout the country and throughout this period from 2019. One that comes to mind that will relate to seniors is question of police certificate of character. We employ digital ambassadors at the post offices because we know that seniors will generally frequent the post office and use the post office as a service. So we have the digital ambassadors there as a group that we can engage in order to provide that helping hand and that assistance to the seniors as they seek to engage the government in terms of the provision of online services. We have done it, and we will continue to do it. And so that is one area in which we could tend to the needs of the seniors. In recent times, we've also looked at how we can provide or improve the digital intelligence, I may say, of seniors through digital skills and building digital skills across the board. And in digital skills, we have to look at the foundational skills first. I mean, what are some of the basic things that seniors need to do? I mean, this may or may not be an easy task. We are approaching it from trying to get information from them. We have already formed a committee to look at how we can get some of this information so that we make any training intervention relevant to the needs of that target group. And so we formed this committee. You had mentioned community development. Yes, in fact, we have reached out to the community development, and the Chief Community Development Officer is a member of that committee. Along with the disabilities unit, we're looking at the disabled community. We're even looking at across we're looking at Christian community, Barbados Christian Council, and so on. So we have a number of stakeholders that we have brought together to look at how we can build out this program. But we want to get useful information because we realize that persons would have there will be different levels really, even among the basic levels. So we have to really be sure about how we execute such a program because we want to make it effective. And so we're using that scientific approach because we're looking at, if you want to say, evidence-based policy making. So we want to have a survey and to gather information and then use that information to build up programs. So yes, we want to roll out programs at the community level.
Director Bostic.
Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Honourable Minister, thanks very much for your question, your eloquence, as well as the determination I've seen in your face and your questions. My name is Clifford Bostic, Director, Digital Infrastructure. The crux of the matter, really, Minister, is dealing with the quality of service and the quality of service standards that we need to set in this country so that we can better manage telecommunications. What we have seen is we have done an audit of mobile services, and that audit provided us with confirmation of many of the things that we knew before, but it also gave us recommendations, and those recommendations were accepted by the service providers. The audit was done using the International Telecommunications Union, some of the consultants that they use across the world to help with these things. It was to show where are the gaps and what needs to be done. And after the audit, as a project, we went into operational mode. So we partnered, government partnered with the service providers to work towards, on a daily basis, towards improving those gaps. What we are going to embark on in this next coming financial year is an audit for fixed services, and that speaks to landlines, that speaks to voice lines that you have at your home with internet as well as TV services. So that audit, again, will give us the recommendations which we will work with the service providers, partner with them to fix those gaps. Now, I need to step back just a bit, just to give you a little more context of where we are. Back in the 1990s, we had a single mobile provider, and the name was B-Mobile. It was a business that was formed by the then existing international telecommunications company as well as a national communication company within Barbados. It was a single entity. We were in a monopoly at that stage. So what happened was the infrastructure, which is the building blocks to how you provide these services, were based on a monopoly. So what we ended up with were cell sites and cell towers all across Barbados in the prime locations, but only fit for one provider. When we broke that monopoly and we allowed for competition in the market, we had to change the rules, we had to change the policy, we have to change the prescription as to how cell sites should be set up. And we now have a situation where cell sites on land that's rented by these same providers can accommodate 2 or 3 providers. But guess what? Those in existence previously with B-Mobile could only accommodate 1 provider. Now we have to work and partner with the service providers to change that so that we have those sweet spots for cell sites where you can propagate signals that would cover more of the island for all 3 providers. Now, this is not a project. This is something that has to happen on a daily basis where you detect that I'm losing my signal, especially when I'm driving, and you're now changing from one cell site, switching over to another cell site, but the cell site is a little bit further away from you, or the capacity on that particular cell site is higher simply because we are doing a lot more business while we're traveling, we're in conferences, we're in meetings, we are listening to this debate to hear exactly what Miss is going to do to solve these problems that are killing us. It has been with us for years. And as a result, there's a strain on the network. So the network has a problem with the infrastructure that has to be fixed, but at the same time, the demand for the services is going up. And so you have 2 moving targets. One is demand, and the other one is changing the infrastructure. Now, move away from mobile to fixed services, you have the same problem. We started out with copper wires running all across Barbados. There was a use, and this copper wire still exists. I hope persons don't go in the sea trying to find this copper. This copper moves from somewhere in Europe along the coast of the UK and comes all the way into Barbados as the first point of entry into the Caribbean region. It then extends from Barbados into St. Lucia, St. Vincent, Dominica, and travels up the way, all the way up to Jamaica. Now, that was the only means of communication at that time. We have since then moved from that type of infrastructure into fiber. So you have fiber coming into Barbados and extending right up the chain. And there are at least 3 fiber cables. So we have, so the infrastructure has improved. Internally within Barbados, and I'm talking about fixed services now, your landline at your home, where you get your voice line, you can get your Wi-Fi, your internet, as well as your access to IPTV, was on fiber, was on copper, sorry. Hello, yes, was on copper, pardon me, was on copper up to a few years ago, and Barbados now has been declared as the first country in the world to have complete fiber across all of its land areas. So fiber is available to everyone in Barbados within a mile. There are some places where to get to that additional mile, you may need to have some kind of wireless access because of the terrain. You know, in parts of Barbados where there's land slippage and so on and so forth, you cannot put a fiber, you can't put a pole to start with. You can't dig underground to put cable on the ground because when the land slips, there goes the fiber. But we are the first country to have fiber within every single home. It is passing every single home in Barbados. The next step is to make sure that you have some means of moving from that fiber to the home at the right price. So the plan for us is to have the audit done, work with these service providers, implement the recommendations, and thereafter continue to improve, because one thing COVID has taught us is that you have to move towards online access for everyone, not just school children, as well as working individuals from age 18 to 65 or 67, and for the aged from 67 to 100 and something, because our people are living quite long, but also for those persons who are differently abled. A few years ago, a young lady who you all know, she's differently able, but she formed part of a community, and she said to me, we as adults who have all our faculties together, we can see well, we can speak well, we can hear well, are only a few seconds away from becoming disabled. And then you realize that the disabled need special devices, they need special services so that they can be part of this movement. And so when we formulate those quality of service standards for mobile and for fixed services, we're not doing it on our own. MIS is not doing it on its own. MIS is doing it in partnership with the ITU, who is very interested in assisting us with this, as well as the Fair Trading Commission, so that we have standards that would be agreed by the market, agreed by the service providers, and agreed by government, and we would have seen the effects of what quality looks like, or what quality needs to be like in this market where we have a pandemic. I know that health-wise, it is not what you want, but in terms of technology and driving technology, it is exactly what you want. You're forcing us, we've been forced to go online with good quality of service so that you do not frustrate those, especially those persons who are not so good at the technology because they either have not spent sufficient time or their first experience with the technology has been a bad experience. And once you get a person who has a bad experience with technology, you can bet it is very difficult to get them to come on board. And that is why, in some cases, before we deploy, before we bring products to the market, before we bring services to the market, we have to be extremely careful. So the communications that was spoken about earlier is very, very important, because you have to hold the hands of all of us. And when that is done properly, then you will see better reception, you will see persons coming on board and getting past the difficulties. as long as it is man-made, you can expect that there will be failures. As long as it is man-made, you can expect that there will be delays when things happen. Finally, I want to speak on the issue you raised about calling to get assistance.
Director, I would ask you to be very brief with this response at this time. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the reminder. Yes, so way back in the 90s, the operator had customer service, and customer service was built with persons who had experience in the industry, persons who worked in various areas, and as they got closer to retirement, they sought to help the customers. So what took place was that when the first Windward Contact Center was set up for Barbados and the Windward Islands, with a backup in Bermuda, in Anguilla, this was done because Barbados had a lot of expertise in all the areas, in marketing, in billing, in the technology, and how to solve issues that occurred on your internet, how to solve problems on your phone. They had groups who would teach people how to do things, but that has moved. Those persons were highly paid, but that service has moved out of our region and into places where persons have no idea about our culture and where our stress points. And that is one of the things that we will be discussing with the service providers and partnering with them so that we can get this right, because this is key. This is key, getting to the individuals and helping them to understand how to navigate and use the services much better. Because part of the problem is poor quality in some instances. Another part of the problem is not being able to navigate when there's an issue and find solutions that are in the end user's hands to solve. So I'll have to end here, but thank you very much for your question.
Thank you. Honourable Minister, you may now proceed to wrap up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, it's really a pleasure for me to have been here during the course of this estimates debate and to have been able to be given the opportunity to speak on the behalf of the Ministry of Industry, Innovation, Science and Technology and to give some of the plans that we have. We, sir, did not get to touch on all of them. And I would want to say that I am pleased and privileged to have a ministry that has such a significant remit in moving the needle forward in Barbados. We are at an interesting time in our nation's development. It is a time where there's so many exogenous shocks, there's so many external factors that we have to grapple with on a daily basis. And we still have some internal peculiarities and things that we need to get right within our nation. And I do believe that a thrust on industry, a thrust on innovation, science and technology is going to be one of the key things, one of the key drivers that would allow us as a nation to increase and improve and enhance our competitiveness as a small island developing state. So it is an honor for us to be here as a team to lead that charge. And what I have described are not just projects, Mr. Chairman, but we're talking here about major paradigm shifts in how the public service currently operates. And we know, even as the last question coming from the member from St. Thomas, we know that there will be a divide and there will be certain persons who will not be able to move at as quick a pace as others. And we are mindful of this and we will work, as we said, with all groups, all stakeholder groups, all people groups within our country to ensure that we can bring everyone along. But we want to underscore that these shifts are absolutely necessary if Barbados is going to be competitive. We're not competing just against the other nations within the Caribbean region. We're competing because of globalization with every single country on the face of Earth. So we're competing with countries in Europe. We're competing with all of the United States of America. So it's not just for us to create opportunities so that our 300,000 people can exist. We don't just want to exist, but we want that our people can survive and thrive within a global village where our citizens can then can keep pace with and can compete effectively against persons in every other part of this planet. So, Mr. Chairman, change is not easy in many cases. It can oftentimes be very disruptive, and sometimes it can be very uncomfortable, but of course it is necessary for us to change. And we need this transformation process that this ministry will play a critical role in bringing forth, and all of the other ministries and all of my ministerial colleagues, we all collectively will be playing a critical role in ensuring that the transformative process is taking place in Barbados, and that we're leading our people into not only the 21st century, but even beyond that. I want to declare that my ministry is committed to this task. And with that being said, Mr. Chair, I would like to thank each and every one of the ministry officials from the PS and CEO of BADC and all of the directors that are here with me sitting in this room. And not only them, but I want to thank each and every other member of the ministry's team that is every single day working assiduously to ensure that this ministry does what it's supposed to do and delivers for the people of Barbados. I also want to thank all of my parliamentary colleagues who would have asked questions and would have given us the opportunity to share the details of our ministry's agenda for 2022-2023. And in closing, also to thank our Prime Minister for giving me the opportunity to sit in this chair and for reposing that confidence in me. And I will do all that I can, not only for her, but for the good people of this ministry and the good people of Barbados, to ensure that we deliver on our mandate. And with that being said, Mr. Chairman, I am obliged, and I once again beg to move that Head 31 stand part.
Thank you. Honourable Member for Christchurch East.
Chair, I would like to first just commend the Honourable Member for an excellent presentation, and I beg that you do now report progress to His Honour the Speaker and ask for leave to sit again.
The question is that I do now report. The question is that I do now report progress to His Honour the Speaker and ask for leave to sit again. All those honourable members in favour, please say aye. Honourable members against, please say nay. Methinks the ayes have it.
The chairman has reported progress and requests leave to sit again. Honourable Member for Christchurch East.
Mr. Speaker, I beg that we do suspend proceedings until 10 minutes past 12.
The question is that this honourable chairman will be suspended until 10 minutes after 12. All those honourable members in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it. This honourable chamber stands suspended until 10 minutes after 12. This sitting is resumed. Prior to the suspension, this Honourable Chairman was in Standing Finance Committee. We returned to Standing Finance Committee.
This House is in Standing Finance Committee.
Mr. Chairman, Head 86, Ministry of Health and Wellness has amended $257,058,731.
Honourable Member for St. Michael, West Central.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I would like to seek leave to join members of the Ministry of Health and Wellness team in the well, and in doing so, sir, I would also like to ask for leave for the Minister of State in the Ministry of Health and Wellness to join us.
So granted, Honourable Member for St. Michael West Central. Honourable Minister, you may proceed with your opening remarks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good afternoon. Mr. Chairman, in moving ahead, we wish to set out the broad policy for the allocation of Head 86, but I would also want to introduce members of the ministry's team who will be answering questions. With me is the Minister of State in the Ministry of Health and Wellness, Dr. the Honourable Sonia Brown. Also the Permanent Secretary, the Most Honourable Jeanette Phillips, Dr. the Most Honourable Kenneth George, Chief Medical Officer, Dr. Anton Best, Deputy Chief Medical Officer, Ms. Rashima Cheltenham-Niles, Director Planning and Research, Ms. Kathy Ann Drayton, Finance Officer, Dr. Ingrid Cumberbatch, Senior Medical Officer of Health, Dr. Arthur Phillips, the Senior Medical Officer of Health, Ms. Francina Banscom, Chief Environmental Health Officer, Mr. Danny Gill, Health Finance Commissioner, Mr. Junior Burgess, Director of Information Systems, and at the institutions we have Mr. David Leacock, Director of the Hospital, Director of the Psychiatric Hospital, Dr. Brian McClacken, Senior Consultant Psychiatrist, Mrs. Heather Payne Drakes, Hospital Manager, Geriatric Hospital, Mrs. Miriam Hines, Director of the Drug Service, Dr. Sandra Beckles, Director of the Bestos Santos Lab. We also have with us from the Queen Elizabeth Hospital, the Executive Chairman, Mrs. Juliette Bynor Sutherland, Mr. Adrian Hurley, Director of Financial Services, Dr. Clyde Cave, Director of Medical Services, Mrs. Paula Abuga, I believe I pronounced it incorrectly, forgive me if I didn't, Director of Engineering Services, Mrs. Ingrid Cadoroa, Operations Manager, Harsons Point, Mr. Tony Harris, Director of the National Cardiology Project, and Ms. Louise Bob, Director of Support Services. The request for 342.8 million is broken down as follows. Personal emoluments of 118 million, goods and services of approximately 75.7 million, recurrent transfer 140.9, with capital expenditure amounting to 7.8 million. Mr. Chairman, all of these millions only sound good on paper, but can only mean something if we can improve the health of the nation in a way that it positively affects the ordinary man in the street who cannot afford private health care. The Queen Elizabeth Hospital will be a significant priority for my ministry. We will focus on what is achievable, what can be delivered in this coming financial year, with a clear understanding of what capital requirements are necessary. On assuming office, I instructed the Executive Chairman of the Queen Elizabeth Hospital to prepare a 5-year capital expenditure program for the ministry's review. The capital expenditure program will involve stakeholder participation to better understand what is needed at the QEH to enhance efficiency and effectiveness. The capital works strategy and plan, along with other critical improvements in hospital quality, human resource planning, improve access to pharmaceuticals, medical technologies, and cardiac care, both pre-hospital and in-hospital care, so as to improve patient care and ensure successful outcomes. Having asked for the information on the most pressing outstanding issues and how they should be prioritized, I have been advised that urgent and immediate action should be given to the correction of a long-standing problem at the hospital, namely the long list of overdue and varied surgical operations that have piled up over the last several years. For example, I've been advised that the waiting list for cataract surgery is in excess of 700 persons. And of course, this is highly acceptable and will be reduced in the shortest possible time. We are currently exploring partnerships to reduce this backlog with the people and government of Cuba. I've already signaled to the Queen Elizabeth Hospital that overdue surgeries will have to be brought up to date. To this end, we are devising plans to address how to reduce this backlog, including out-of-the-box commercial thinking. To do so, we will have to do all we can to get the Lions Eye Care Center up and running to ensure that those on the waiting list who cannot afford to pay for private eye surgeries can have them done at the Queen Elizabeth Hospital free of cost. The time has come for those who work hard to send us to school to help build this country must no longer in their time of need be left in a painful state. The capital expenditure plan will include getting the 12 operating theaters back into full operation, Currently, 9 theatres are operational, and those responsible will be required to have all 12 theatres working during the day and night. Another example is the backlog of some approximately 1,800 persons waiting for CT scans. We are reviewing options to come up with a quick and satisfactory solution. The overall objective of the Queen Elizabeth Hospital is now execution with precision driven by results. Revised monthly reporting systems will be put in place to measure progress on key deliverables, including surgical wait lists, to help inform us on the outcome of what is necessary to achieve the stated objectives. The Ministry of Health and Wellness will continue to aim for the provision of equitable, affordable, quality, and humane health care at primary and tertiary levels. COVID has added yet another layer to health care delivery, which, in a short 2 years, has resulted in a paradigm shift in the governance and management of health care across all sectors. In the 2022-2023 financial year, the Ministry of Health and Wellness will be supporting the return to improve governance and management of COVID and non-COVID health sectors. As we move away from lockdowns and restrictions of movement to purposeful and progressive opening of our economy, we expect that expenditure will return to pre-COVID levels. In financial year 2022-23, the Ministry of Health and Wellness will transition from a COVID-centered healthcare response to one that embraces all aspects of healthcare. I've already signaled that primary healthcare, environmental health, mental health reform, access to essential pharmaceuticals and vaccines, HIV/AIDS, climate change, disaster preparedness, and non-communicable disease will be our non-COVID focus. However, our mandate does not stop there. We will be forging ahead forward by providing better working conditions in terms of engagement for nurses, doctors, supporting and ancillary staff. We have listened to the concerns of the nurses through their respective trade unions and have already taken proactive steps, including appointments, payment of overtime, and better physical working conditions. We will further strengthen our relationships with our regional and international partners, including the Pan American Health Organization, the Health Economics Unit at St. Augustine campus of the University of the West Indies, the Caribbean Regional Public Health Agency, CARPHA, to tackle the complex issues as healthcare financing, human resource for health care, and child obesity. I believe that, particularly in the time of COVID, we must redouble our efforts so as to provide complete and accessible health care to the elderly and persons with NCDs. In addition, our partnerships with the Heart and Stroke Foundation, the Barbados Diabetes Foundation, and the Barbados Family Planning Association, and the University of the West Indies will continue. We are grateful for the partnerships formed through the cordial and productive relationships with the government and people of Ghana and Cuba, particularly in support of nursing services in Barbados. The government of China has offered their continuing support to the Queen Elizabeth Hospital by providing technical, medical, and surgical disciplines to assist in the improvement of patient care. And the Ministry of Health and Wellness will continue to forge partnerships with Ross and Chamberlain universities. We will continue to safeguard the professionals that deliver health care by ensuring that the councils which govern all professional bodies are given the resources to perform their statutory functions. Some of the specific deliverables for the coming financial year will include the reintroduction of the stipend for nurses funded to the tune of $2 million, incentivizing the population to choose careers in nursing. Improvements in cardiac care, both pre-hospital and hospital care, in-hospital care. Reconfiguration of the Queen Elizabeth Hospital to facilitate the relocation of the outpatient clinic and administrative offices to create additional clinical space at the Queen Elizabeth Hospital. Supporting the construction of a new geriatric facility at the Botanical Gardens, piloting the introduction of a tissue and organ transplant bill into Parliament, and completing renovations of the St. Thomas Outpatient Clinic, as well as advising on blueprint for the Alzheimer's respite facility at the Gordon Cummins Hospital. In a revenue-constrained environment, I will be requiring all department heads to pay special and close attention to how funds are used and allocated as we manage our healthcare system. I take this opportunity to mention two areas which, in my view, have the potential for revenue generation. These are the Best Dos Santos Public Health Lab and Harrison's Point. As we slowly transition out of the COVID environment, the opportunity for income generation by Best Dos Santos and Harrison's Point will be fully explored. As I indicated approximately 2 weeks ago, healthcare is fast becoming a major sector for employment, not only for nurses, but biomedical technicians and engineers, radiographers, radiotherapists, ultrasound technicians, and other specialist ancillary staff, with millions being invested in private healthcare in Barbados. The time for persons to commence training is now to take advantage of those expanding healthcare employment opportunities that will arise when healthcare investment projects materialize. Overall, the ministry's ambitious program will result in enhanced healthcare delivery, strategies to combat non-communicable diseases to help lower healthcare costs in the medium to long term, health promotion, new models for healthcare delivery and financing, employment opportunities when healthcare investment projects come on stream, modern mental health strategies, improve environmental monitoring and regulating, maintenance of pharmaceutical costs on quality and pricing to sustain the drug service, and maintaining vital and critical lab services that did us so proud during the COVID-19 pandemic. Let me once again thank all workers involved in the COVID response. And mindful of the role of a ministry, we will continue to work with our partners to ensure Barbados's healthcare institutions are upgraded and expanded. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Honourable Minister, could you please move ahead?
Mr. Chairman, I beg to move that head 86 stand per.
5 seconds, sir.
At this time, we will proceed with questions from the dishonorable chamber. However, before we do so, just for the benefit of your team, Minister, let me just outline the basic rules. As you know, Minister, you would have 5 minutes to respond to any questions raised. Members of your team would have 3 minutes to do the same, to respond as well. And I would also ask that when you are about to address, before you address the particular question, this is for the members of the team or public servants, please give your name and the particular area or your particular office that you are in. Just give your name for the records of this house. Thank you. Honourable Member for St. Michael West.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon to the Honourable Ministers and Ministry officials. First and foremost, I would like to congratulate the Honourable Ministers on your appointments to a very important ministry. I would also like to express my appreciation for the stellar leadership of your predecessor, the Most Honourable Lieutenant Colonel Jeffrey Bostick. In that vein, our former honourable comrade coined the phrase, "No retreat, no surrender," to describe our resolve in the fight against COVID-19. On inspection of your estimates, it is clear that from subheading 366, that the focus will change from COVID-19 to NCDs, as that pandemic is more going towards endemicity. According to a report by the Barbados National Registry, heart attacks and strokes were the leading cause of death in 2019 in Barbados, and presumably that persists today. Now, also a study done by University of West Indies Chronic Disease Research Center, Barbados has the second highest incidence of amputations in the world at 76 per 100,000. In keeping with the military parlance of our former honorary brother, this phenomenon must then be described as the enemy within. Honorable Ministers, can you articulate the plan to fight this sleeping enemy which is already within our borders?
Thank you, Honourable Member. And of course, I would have commended my predecessor and all the work that he would have done in the ministry in my very first outing as a media briefing as a minister, and I do so again today. In respect of NCDs, you're quite right. The Prime Minister, in constructing her cabinet, appointed a Minister of State within the ministry. And in so doing, the Prime Minister indicated that a significant focus must be in the ministry in this term, must be on NCDs, non-communicable diseases. We are fortunate that we have a medical doctor, Dr. Sonia Brown, as a minister in the ministry. And we also have with us a team of professionals who have been working with us for a long time and who continue to guide the ministry in respect of NCDs. I do agree that the rate of amputation is a serious matter for engagement as it is for concern. And I can tell you that we had exploratory talks with other officials to address the issue of how best we can save limbs. I'm not a medical doctor, and therefore I can't speak as fluently as I would like to on the issue. But what I can tell you is that it has engaged the attention of the ministry, and since joining the ministry, both ministers have been engaged in discussions, exploratory discussions with others. At this point, what I would like to do, as Dr. Sonia Brown, the Minister of State in the ministry, will be leading this charge, I would give her an opportunity to speak, and thereafter, in respect of the issues surrounding the cardiac approach, I will ask Mr. Tony Harris to speak to us as well. And in respect of the other matters, I believe that Dr. Arthur Phillips will also be in a position to address matters pertaining to the NCDs. Minister?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Minister. Since we have other members speaking, but I want to say, of course, my 2 cents worth. Yes, COVID has succeeded in putting the NCDs issues on the back burner or middle burner, as it were. And as you said, quite rightly, we are now moving forward in addressing the matters with the NCDs. We are not proud that we're considered the capital of amputations in the world, but this is where we now see that the focus monetarily, financially, has to be placed on the primary care setting where we address the NCDs at an early stage. That being said, it would include the involvement of all sectors in society, perhaps starting with the school-age children, probably before school age, as I said in another forum, where it involves the education and the input of the players, whether it be parents, students, the players that matter in terms of the companies that produce beverages, sweetened beverages, where it be a matter of the school meals department, which the nutrition center liaises with to address the feeding patterns and the nutritional status of students. And I may say COVID has succeeded in seeing that we have increased numbers of underweight students and malnourished children, especially under 5s, and that's where the National Nutrition Center comes in. I also want to hasten to add that the NCD fight has to involve not only the Ministry of Health and Wellness, but almost all of the other ministries represented by those in front of you now, Mr. Chair. So we need involvement not only from the Ministry of Education, as alluded to earlier, but the ministries that one would not necessarily think of with respect to the NCD fight. So, for instance, the Ministry of Transport and Works, we need to be a little more progressive, and I addressed this 2 days ago, where we need the involvement of the Ministry of Transport and Works with respect to walking paths, with respect to sidewalks, with respect to accessibility, basically to exercise. It will involve the National Conservation Commission with respect to our parks. It spans a very broad, across almost all the ministries. We need to tackle the issues like labeling of packages, and one of our neighbors had succeeded in doing so, demanding that packages be labeled. We need to, town and country planning, for instance, needs to address the location of fast food outlets, for instance. We've come to see that many of the fast food outlets have been located right next to or in close proximity to some of these schools. These are some of the areas that we need to address with respect to NCDs. But as I said before, the focus financially has to be on the primary care setting. This decreases the burden on the tertiary care settings, because if we could control the occurrence of NCDs, some of it you can't help in terms of genetics, but some of it you can. Obesity needs to be addressed. The control or the prevention of diabetes needs to be addressed in the primary care setting. And this would be aided by the 9 polyclinics which we have, and the outpatient clinics, of course, where pre-COVID, these were the centers for addressing the NCDs firsthand, foremost. The hypertensives, the diabetics were usually well controlled or fairly well controlled at this end, but COVID have put a damper on their efforts, and it's my mission and the Ministry of Health and Wellness to see that this becomes the forefront issue. At this point, I want to hand over, first of all, to Dr. Arthur Phillips to give you a little more information on the NCDs. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm grateful to the ministers for Arthur Phillips, Senior Medical Officer of Health NCDs. Grateful to the ministers for laying the context for the fight against NCDs. And this indeed is one of our key issues that we need to address, as it is a leading cause of death and illness, and affects productivity across sectors. So the issue of general prevention, I think, has been outlined. The issue of diabetes management, I think, is absolutely key. Individuals who have diabetes need to know that they have diabetes, and that diabetes needs to be managed well. So there need to be up-to-date clinical guidelines, there need to be training on those guidelines, there needs to be auditing around general diabetes control, as well as issues around foot care and wound care in that context. Where individuals already have issues in terms of their peripheral nervous system and vasculature, then there's need for additional intervention in terms of ensuring that there's access to podiatry and other aspects of supportive care, as well as wound care, to reduce the chance of amputation. In some cases, revascularization will be possible and will reduce the risk of amputation. In some cases, people will need adaptations to their footwear to, again, reduce the chance. So there's prevention at each step of the way: prevention of persons developing NCDs, prevention of diabetes being out of control, prevention of complications to the feet resulting in amputations. And all of this is part of our effort to continue to ensure that appropriate care is available in both public and private sectors to all persons in Barbados. So the issue of amputations is something that that we are actively looking at, and our current diabetes guidelines speak to it, but we're going to continue to reinforce in terms of training and auditing to ensure that appropriate care is given. In terms of the wider policy context, the NCD strategic plan, we've just updated the statistics, and this is going to be resubmitted to Cabinet shortly. It's being formatted at the moment. So this is going to speak to all of the issues that we address in terms of risk factor reduction, treatment of NCDs, within which the issue of amputation falls, childhood obesity prevention, which Minister Brown mentioned, coordinating with all the various players in the public and private and civil society sectors, resource mobilization and allocation, because it is not inexpensive to manage NCDs, and the proportion of funds that have gone to preventive efforts has traditionally been very, very small. in some cases less than 1%. So there's a lot that we have to do, but we have clear plans, and there is a commitment to ensure that the resources are available and that we monitor to make sure that we are achieving our goals. Thank you.
Ms. Harris, you want to weigh in as well?
Good afternoon to the Honourable Chamber. Good afternoon to the ministers, Mr. Goodinechil and Dr. Brown. It's on, isn't it? Yes. Thank you very much for the chance to speak on this. Certainly, as you know, we are conducting a improvement plan for cardiac care as it relates to acute myocardial infarction, and we have made tremendous progress in this.
Mr. Director, could you please give your
Yes,
name?
my name is Mr. Anthony Harris. I am on special assignment for in the project for the reduction of mortality in acute myocardial infarction. Sorry about that, but as I was saying, we are conducting that exercise. We have done a number of things. As you may be aware, the government of Barbados has established a national registry with CDRC, UWI, for the conduct of a national registry in 3 topics, there being acute myocardial infarction, stroke, and cancer. So we have been working closely with them to ensure that we have reliability and rapid access to the data, and using this to guide us and to ensure that going forward we can chart and demonstrate our improvements in these areas as we put measures in place. We have also looked at the emergency ambulance service, had a series of meetings with them, also established training programs for the care of the patient with acute myocardial infarction. We have done a number of improvements, or there have been a number of improvements with this service. The Barbadian public may not be fully aware, but the ambulances are now equipped with cardiac monitors that allow the transfer of data from the field directly to the Queen Elizabeth Hospital, particularly at 2 points, that being the accident and emergency department and the cardiac unit at the hospital. We have also been encouraging private ambulance to these meetings, ensure their training, so that all Barbadians, those using the private service or the public service, would benefit from these improvements. This has been successful. During the last financial year, the government has provided us with the resources and funds to allow for the purchase as well of what are called autopulses that allow for resuscitation of patients in a moving ambulance. And this, we believe, will be also significant to improving care and ensuring patients get to the hospital alive. A lot of patients were coming to the hospital only pronounced dead on arrival. We are also have to tackle the whole notion that the ambulance is the reliable service to use, and to try to discourage patients from bringing their relatives to the Queen of Hospital in private vehicles, but trust that the ambulance service will be readily respond and be able to perform their duties for ensuring that these patients do arrive at the hospital alive. We have also done a number of exercises within the Queen Elizabeth Hospital. The cardiovascular department, the interventional cardiologist, Dr. Don Scanterbury, has been working closely with the accident and emergency in her department to ensure that the care of patients who present with heart attack is of a first world nature, and that the patients are getting the best care that they can. To it's important that when a patient comes with an acute myocardial infarction in progress, that little time is lost in opening and revascularizing that patient. At the Queen Elizabeth Hospital at present, this is done predominantly by a thrombolytic process. That is a so-called clot busting exercise that we have, but it is not very useful if several hours pass. And therefore, we are trying to hone everything such that the patient can be managed and treated and executed within those magic window of 3 hours. And with that, if we can do that, not only are lives saved, but long-term morbidity, heart failure and stuff, which is a rising burden at the Queen Elizabeth Hospital, can be prevented, as most of your myocardium, or nearly all of your myocardium, will be saved, and therefore your heart can continue to function normally. We are at the point now, COVID has kind of put this on the back burner. That was that we need to start a public education drive, but we thought that with the flurry of health information coming because of COVID, it probably would be a little overwhelming, and also we would be subsumed by the amount of COVID-related information. But in this era going forward, we certainly is going to pick it back up, that we are going to be pushing the ensuring that the public does know what is available, how best to utilize it, how they can help, and how they can help prevent, play their role in prevention of more death and morbidity, long-term morbidity problems. I believe I was informed that we have 3 minutes. I think that is basically it. But I would just like to touch briefly on the amputation aspects as well. At the Queen Elizabeth Hospital, this has been something that has been concerning us for some time. And a few years ago, we had been looking at training. As the Minister mentioned, we have had technical assistance in medical field from the Republic of China, and they have also brought some interventionalists and vascular surgeons. And we are looking forward to the return of a freshly trained and minted vascular surgeon, Dr. Nina Yap, who will also lead revascularization drive to help prevent and reduce amputation at the Queen Elizabeth Hospital. But of course, the vascular destroying conditions of diabetes and hypertension have to be tackled up front if we are going to see a sustained reduction in that. Thank you very much.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I would also like to add that the ongoing works with the Barbados Diabetes Foundation. The Barbados Diabetes Foundation, we had the honor of meeting with them during the short 4 weeks we've been in office, and they too continue to perform and serve not only the Barbadian public, but certainly the region in executing their mandate to assist us with the control and risk factors associated with diabetes. Within the ministry as well, there's a health promotion unit, and I'm pleased to let you know that the health promotion unit will continue to educate Barbadians about healthy eating, about lifestyle management and changes to their lifestyles. Nutrition policy will also feature very prominently during the forthcoming financial year, because it is our wish to execute and implement the national, the NCD plan that Minister Brown will be leading, Dr. Brown will be leading on our behalf. And therefore, I can give you the assurance that we will continue to work with all of those partners. Lastly, there's also a lot of work being done by the George Allen Chronic Disease Center. That center continues to, provide the Ministry of Health and certainly Queen Elizabeth Hospital with a lot of research. And that research information will go a long way in allowing us to devise and revise critical strategic plans as we launch our NCD drive. and we met with Professor Simon Anderson, I believe I recall that's his name, early in the stages of our appointment, and he has also given his perspective and the perspective of the George Allen Chronic Disease Center. So we will be working with all those institutions as we craft a national plan for NCDs, and supporting that by leading, working with the task force and the commissions that we've set up to drive that process forward. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, Mr. Chair, this is not a second question, but just a comment. I'm not sure if public access to defibrillators, as is common in the US, can help, especially with cardiac situations, but maybe that is something that the ministry can look at as well. Now, to my second question. As I have canvassed and traversed the constituency of St. Michael West, I do encounter lots of constituents who have expressed frustration with the long waiting lists for surgical and non-surgical procedures on an outpatient basis. Now, as Barbados seeks to become world-class in the delivery of services across the public sector, as stated by the Honourable Prime Minister, and as we engage as a government in facilitating growth in our economy, it follows that the health of our populace is tantamount to these goals, as productivity in the workforce will be key. Now, I heard the Honourable Minister's comments in his opening statement in terms of beefing up the capacity to treat or to beef up the surgery and non-surgical procedures. In one instance, I think the Minister alluded to using the Cuban doctors, and I want to publicly express my appreciation for those Cuban doctors and nurses who have also helped us with our COVID-19 pandemic. But I think that we also have to look at the issue of the bottlenecks with resources, specifically supplies. Now, I am aware that some surgeons and doctors, specifically at the QEH, have pulled their own pockets to purchase supplies in the interest of performing these surgeries. So I think that that also needs to be urgently addressed. Can the ministers address these issues? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Honourable Member. I think it's safe to say that, and based on my very brief stint thus far at the ministry, that the Queen Elizabeth Hospital, as I indicated, will become a top priority for my ministry. But I would also like to caution that the Queen Elizabeth Hospital's budget is not where it ought to be, and we understand why. We are coming out of the throes of a pandemic. Government revenues, especially from the productive sectors, would have been reduced, and therefore the government can only transfer so much money to the Queen Elizabeth Hospital. As you will know in the estimates, that we have made a provision for the transfer to the Queen Elizabeth Hospital. Now, we have to deal with a lot of the issues. The issue that I raised earlier had to do with a capital plan. In order for the hospital to reduce its non-recurrent expenditure, it will have to go the route of increasing its capital expenditure. Now, the government, in coming to office back in 2018, would have allocated and spent approximately $18 million to assist the hospital with its capital expenditure. Now, that went a long way, but it didn't go far enough, and therefore what we are discussing is looking at a capital expenditure program that would certainly reduce the cost of doing business currently at the hospital. It would save us key expenditure in key areas now that we either have to outsource or we have to patch and repair. But it would also allow the Queen Elizabeth Hospital
to get the necessary equipment that it needs in order to enhance patient care and delivery. And until we reach that point, and I know that we're going to get there in short time, once we have that capital expenditure plan, like I said in my opening remarks, we are going to discuss and involve all stakeholders. But we also going to, as ministers, we are going to walk the Queen Elizabeth Hospital to also look and see the priorities and the ranking list. And once we get that, then we'll be in a better position to start the process. In respect of the waiting list for surgeries, and I alluded to part of that in my opening remarks, it is a problem. And it is a problem that we're going to have to fix in the shortest possible time. We can't get everything fixed within 1 year or 2 years. But certainly, there are some quick initiatives that I think we can implement, provided we have capital expenditure to do what we have to do. And once we do so, I think we will start to see a reduction in the backlog of surgical and non-surgical procedures. Like you, I've heard from my constituents in St. Michael West Central as well, who commented on sometimes having to go and having to wait or to come back. And I came to the ministry with a very open mind, but a very clear position that we have to work together with the Queen Elizabeth Hospital and with all the related parties at the Queen Elizabeth Hospital to address this issue. But I think, in fairness, we also have to start addressing not only capital equipment issues, we also have to address issues regarding the processes that are currently engaged at the hospital and see how best we can improve those processes to enhance patient delivery and patient care. And I think that we are going to see, in the shortest possible time, an improvement. The fact that I was able to tell you this afternoon that we have in excess of 700 persons waiting for cataract surgery is a clear indication that we've gone to work as ministers within the ministry, and we're asking for the information to better plan. So once we have that information in front of us and we know what is required, we will go to work. Like I said, we are also exploring additional opportunities with agencies abroad and also with governments who've been working with us to see if we can enhance our patient delivery. And it will take some time, but the clear signal I want to send to the country that the ministry will be very focused on the whole issue of the wait lists as it relates to surgical procedures in Barbados, and that we are going to devise a plan to address the issue of backlog. And when we've reached that point, we will then message it and communicate with the public to let them know what we intend to do. And like I said in my remarks, opening remarks, we are going to measure it so that at any point we'll be in a position to ask the Queen Elizabeth Hospital, if you said you had 700 cases waiting for cataract surgery, for example, at a defined period, how many cases have you completed? And the Lions Eye Care Center as well, we're going to have to spend some money to refurbish that. And if we refurbish that, then we can take some of the pressure off the other operating theaters. I believe, and the Queen Elizabeth Executive Chair can comment on this, that we have maybe an opportunity to maybe have maybe 3 or more theaters within the Lions Eye Care Center to do perform critical surgeries. So if we can get that back into operation, equipped and staff, and also utilize other areas, for example, get the operating theaters back up to the required 12, I think it'd be a wonderful opportunity for us to address these issues. So I can assure you, Honourable Member and other members and the public at large, that we will be working extraordinarily hard to address the issue of the wait lists as well as the outstanding numbers that are waiting for key surgeries. And like I say, it's not only limited to cataract surgery. I use that as one example. I've been advised that there are other areas where there's a wait list, but we will work to combat that. I don't, Minister Brown, if you wish to add that.
Thanks, Chair. Quickly, what I do agree with the Honourable Minister with respect to the CapEx plans, but I want to allude a little bit more so for the public. in terms of where we want to direct some of these issues. As the Minister said before, the Lions Eye Care Center, that is badly in need of repair generally, but also the theaters. So this would free up 3 theaters. One of the issues we want to address, at least in speaking with the staff, is making the theaters, and they are not so now, a 24-hour operation more or less. Right now, the theaters operate on a 8 to 4:30 basis. What needs to happen is that we need to extend the operating hours for longer. We just hired a new chief operations officer, and she has been given some good ideas with respect to the way forward to get rid of some of the backlog for the surgeries. And we are hoping to get some financing from externally so that the hospital can not only service public patients, but increase the private patients coming in that will add to the intake of the hospital, so that it becomes also a money-making institution. There are internal matters with respect to the surgeries as well, and sometimes it's probably a cultural issue with respect to the surgeries. Simple things that would not require capex would be like getting the surgeries to start on time. We also need theater staff, and like everywhere else, COVID had pulled away a lot of the staff from the hospital to service the other COVID areas. So with the closing down of some of the isolation facilities or quarantine facilities, staff should be coming back to the hospital. But people have mentioned things like a pre-anesthetic clinic, which would make the surgeries go a little faster. I know, Honourable Member, one of the things you may have heard, things like joint replacement surgeries, obstetrics, not so much obstetrics, gynecological surgeries that have been on the back burner, but a lot of these reasons are because the theaters are not functioning as efficiently as they should. So we go forward, Minister and I, in trying to find solutions to the issue, apart from the equipment doctors coming in. We know for pediatric, I think they are aided by external sources as well in terms of the pediatric surgeries. You have to look at getting technical assistance in some areas. Orthopedic surgery is one of them. And I was a little bit taken back yesterday when I heard that the orthopedics, in terms of joint replacements were not done for a while. One of the reasons being the absence of trained technical staff. So we have to move forward in terms of nursing staff, in terms of training and getting this back up and running. So that's just my take on that part of the backlog for surgeries.
Thank you, Minister. I will ask just briefly the Executive Chairman of the Queen Elizabeth Hospital just to report on the issue in respect of any backlog surgeries.
Thank you. Both ministers have spoken so eloquently on the issues in such a short space of time. The only thing I can add is that this issue of delays in surgery.
Madam Chair, would you please?
Sorry, my apologies, Honourable Member for St. Lucie, Chair. Juliet Bino Sutherland, Executive Chairperson, Queen Elizabeth Hospital. Thank you. The only thing I'm going to add is that what a particular intervention that we're going to be doing is to really introduce the use of data and matrices to better look at what we do. The best way in which we can measure, as the Honourable Minister Gooding-Edgell has said, our performance is if we're adequately measuring. Currently, we do not have adequate systems for measuring the reasons and the delays for surgeries. So it is, or adding to the additional remarks of our ministers, we're going to be entering into a special project where we're going to survey over a period of time the reasons for the actual delays in surgeries. Some of them will be late arrival of surgeons. Some of them will be late arrival of patients from the ward. Some of them will be the turnaround times between cases. Some of them will be other internal inefficiencies. Once we're able to target and identify the exact causes, we're then able to talk to individual surgeons, talk to individual teams with precise data on exactly what has happened, and you move beyond the issue of anecdote to the actual issue of performance-based management. So what both of our ministers are encouraging us to do is to deepen our response in this regard, and certainly the recruitment of a COO who would have had this assignment at Metropolitan Hospital of moving that hospital from being number 12 in New York Health and Hospital System to number 1, certainly will go far towards identifying a resource person to provide the necessary leadership and team building and capacity support in order for us to reach these goals.
Yeah, and Mr. Chairman, just quickly to let you know that as documented in the amended estimates, this year the Queen Elizabeth Hospital will benefit from the transfer from central government to the tune of 125 million. I believe last year that we would have been 120 million would be transferred. So the government has increased the transfer to the Queen Elizabeth Hospital in the forthcoming financial year by some $5 million. And like I said as well, we are going to be exploring other areas of financing for our capital expenditure so we can retool and re-equip the Queen Elizabeth Hospital. But I want to put the caution out there. We can't do everything in 1 year, 2 years, or 3 years because our resources won't allow it. And as government revenues improve, I'm sure that the Ministry of Finance will continue, as they do, look favorably at the Queen Elizabeth Hospital to see how best they can assist us in improving the operations there. I just thought I'll share that with you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Honourable Ministers, for that assurance, and thank you to the Executive Chair. I look forward to continued improvement in this area. Now, for my third question, which hits a little bit close to home, I have recently had a loved one face the terror of a breast cancer diagnosis. And as we all are aware, our sister, the Honourable Acting Prime Minister, also faced this horrific disease. Even though awareness is heightened, especially during Breast Cancer Month, which I think is in the month of October, many of our Barbadian women are not subjecting themselves to regular screenings. Now, I want to take this opportunity to thank the Barbados Cancer Society for its tremendous work in this area, especially with its breast cancer screening program. But in being intimately involved with this disease, I became aware through that very organization that survival rates in this country, our beloved country, sits at 40%. Now, as I said earlier, as we seek to become world class, I find this somewhat unacceptable. Now, for context, if we were to compare the survival rates in the US and Canada, they sit at 90%. And we're losing way too many sisters in this country. This is mothers and grandmothers. And we must bridge this gap somehow. I would like to add that the Honourable Member from St. Michael South Central would tell you that our women are already underwater as they are disproportionately affected negatively from the COVID-19 pandemic. So as against this backdrop, we can't allow them to suffer anymore. Can the ministry articulate a strategy plan that we can bridge this divide and bring us to world-class statistics?
Thank you very much, Honourable Member, and I empathize with you. I unfortunately lost my mother due to breast cancer as well when I was 14 years of age, and I understand the tremendous pain that families who lost their loved ones when they succumb to cancer. So I fully empathize with those who would have had either a survivor and or a loved one who would have passed as a result of cancer. Breast cancer, like all others, constitute a major risk factor that we're going to have to investigate, and we will have to work closely with all research in order to understand what's happening out there to better inform our approaches to the management of cancer. The ministry is currently working, and certainly an investor had approached the ministry to undertake an investment opportunity to have a cancer clinic in Barbados. We are not at an advanced stage, but we are due to meet with the investor over the next week, and we will have a greater understanding. And obviously, any investment in cancer research and or management of cancer will be welcomed by the ministry and certainly by the government of Barbados. What I would like to do is ask Dr. Arthur Phillips to respond to you as well. He has done, and it's under his responsibility, he's done some work in this area. Dr. Arthur Phillips.
Thank you, Minister. Thank you, Chair. Breast cancer is one of our leading causes of death from cancers in Barbados. In women, it is in close competition with colorectal cancers. In men, of course, prostate cancer is a leading cause of death. In terms of breast cancer, in terms of cancers more generally, our approach is a holistic approach. It's an approach that starts with prevention, including public education, including screening, and of course includes access to effective treatments. We have engaged our colleagues at the University of the West Indies. We would have mentioned our engagement with colleagues on the research side in terms of the Barbados National Registry. And as we mentioned, they provide us with accurate information on the burden of the major chronic diseases, particularly cardiovascular and cancers, as well as factors around when people are presenting and issues around the risk factors for severity of disease. Additionally, we have engaged colleagues at UE to assist us in developing appropriate local guidelines for screening and early detection of cancers, including breast cancer, because the issues around self-examination, the issues around regular examination by a healthcare provider, mammograms, and appropriate biopsy of lumps and removal of suspicious or lesions that are known to be malignant is all part of the package. So we believe that the approach that we are taking in, one, having the data around what is actually happening, and two, ensuring that we have appropriate guidelines, and three, ensuring that we continue to measure and monitor to ensure that we have appropriate outcomes, that this approach, as applicable to cancer prevention and treatment, will bring continued benefits in terms of our breast cancer management approach. Thank you.
Minister Brown.
Yes, I just wanted to add to what Dr. Phillips is saying. Education has to be a big part of it with respect to cancer screening. We are doing quite well, I think, in terms of the opportunity to be screened in Barbados with respect to cancer. We have the cancer support services that follow on to cancer. We have the Cancer Society. We have a few other private institutions that do breast screening. One of the issues we have in Barbados is the education lack of, or the miseducation of women and men with respect to breast cancer. So there's always an ongoing debate with healthcare professionals, with the patients, whether it is safe to do mammograms. These are some of the issues we have to address. People are still scared to do mammograms. A lot of them think that they give you cancer. As Dr. Phillips says, there is also debate ongoing. Now we see in some of the more developed countries, US, they're not advocating necessarily self-examination, whereas the surgeons here, and I agree with them, still advocate for breast self-examination. So education is a big part of it. In getting our women to understand the impact of breast cancer. From a young age, people still have the view that cancers come on as you're aging, but we all know that we're meeting some young people in their 20s that have had to have mastectomies and so on for breast cancer. So, and being, this is also a part of the NCDs. People tend to forget that cancer is considered an NCD. So the fight will go on in this ministry to see where we can improve such measures, but you're right in that screening is definitely important, and the follow-up to screening. Right now, there will be staffing issues with respect to the oncology department at QEH. We're now seeing almost the exit of the chief oncologist there, so it's a matter of having somebody to fill his space. In terms of treatment, we have to look at the availability or the access to PET scans in the public community. Well, social services will be there, but these are things that the ministry, I'm sure, will tackle in the coming years. Thank you. That's it.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I beg to move that you do not report progress to His Honor the Speaker, and beg for leave to sit again.
Second that, sir.
The question is that I do now report progress to His Honor the Speaker, and ask for leave to sit again. All honourable members in favour, please say aye. All honourable members against, please say nay. Methinks the ayes have it.
The chairman has reported progress and requests leave to sit again. Honourable Leader, Government Business.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I beg to move the suspension of the House until 2:45 p.m.
The second that, sir.
Question is that this honourable chairman will be suspended until 2:45 p.m. All those honourable members in favour, please say aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it. This honourable chairman stands suspended until 2:45 p.m.